Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Glynn.
Thanks, and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Mark Connor. He is a lifelong boxer and turned writer. So we're going to talk to him about his hands. That's right. It's Mark. Mark, welcome into the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast.
Thank you. It's really good to meet you, Greg, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome because obviously you've got quite a history here, not only as an athlete, but as I like to say, you've turned that obviously into your athlete brand. You now write quite a bit about boxing and obviously your training services that you've got going on. So there's plenty to dive into. And with the last name Glynn, I know you write a lot about Irish culture. So I wanted to be able to hear from you today. So I'm excited.
That's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. So let's go with this, Mark. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background and, your days as an athlete and how you grew up, because it's a lot different than this generation today.
Okay. Yeah. I grew up on the east side of St. Paul, which is it's a decent area. It's pretty down to earth kind of place. St. Paul is, it's not like it used to be where everyone's as dedicatedly religious as they were, but it was a city that was developed as kind of as a Catholic city. That's why it's named St. Paul. And so I grew up with in going to Catholic schools from first grade on. And when I was 10 years old, I really got fascinated with boxing, and I just begged my father to take me to a gym. Eventually, he did, and I just loved it. I had played one game of football for our playground, but I had just I had the chance to box. I just pretty much quit everything else and just started boxing right away at age 10 when I was in the fifth grade, and eventually I became Upper Midwest Golden Gloves champion when I was 17. I made it to 3 different national tournaments. I had 102 fights. Three of the guys that went to the from St. Paul and went to the National Golden Gloves with me my senior year of high school, which is 1987. They turned professional within a couple of years after that, and fought 11 world champions between them. 2 of them actually won world titles. One was Mike Evgen, who won the IBO International Boxing Organization junior welterweight title. My teammate Will Grigsby won the junior flyweight IBF title. And then Larry Lacrossiere was a welterweight. He didn't ever win a title, but near the end of his career, he went 10-round distance against Julio Cesar Chavez, the Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Didn't get beat up or knocked down. So it's I trained with and boxed with guys who really did they were really kind of a world-class level, and I had some trainers. I mean, the trainers that I had, the gyms that they were run by Emmett Yanez, my first coach, is the Mexican American Boxing Club. When our gym had he'd lost our gym, Recreation Center got closed down. We merged with Rice Street Gym. Jay Pelzer from there, he was the trainer of Mike Evgen, who won the junior welterweight championship. And then the last gym I trained at was 2 guys named Rock White and Dennis Presley, the Interstate Youth League, and they were the trainers of Will Grigsby. And Emmett Yanez, the last amateur he trained, God rest Emmett's soul, he died at just short of 97 in 2016. He trained Rob Brandt, who became the WBA middleweight champion of the world. So I was in kind of a arena of boxing that I really learned a lot from. And that last trainer that I mentioned, Dennis Presley, really kind of rounded out 13 years of previous experience. I went to him for the last 2 competitive years and kind of taught me a lot about explaining body mechanics and how to actually, help an individual understand what I'm teaching,
Yeah.
in how boxing is done. So that kind of gave me the confidence to be a trainer and
Well, you
everything.
know what? You mentioned something there about, being 17, and obviously national, exposure and your career. But I know for you, you kind of felt like maybe when you were at your prime, you didn't have a chance to do what you wanted to do because you then decided to kind of take on obviously the college
You
situation,
know,
right?
I had this expectation. So here's and part of the whole concept of the book that I'm talking to you about. It's about time, millions of copies sold for that. The whole concept of bringing up the coming up with a title and everything was my father died September 30th of 2019, and I was watching him die and praying over him with my mom, and I was thinking to myself that I've gotten to a point where I should have been married and had children. He should have seen that. I haven't published a book yet, things like that. I don't have an excuse to do that anymore. Part of the reason why I did stuff like that, my dad had actually, in a decade earlier, had started an argument with me about it, was I hold on to things too long or I have too much in my mind, this kind of too high standard of perfection. So the guys I mentioned, Will Grigsby, Mike Yevgen, and Larry Lacassiere, who all turned professional, the one who had done the best as an amateur and was ranked in the top 10 was Larry Lacassiere. Um, but they had never won national titles. They didn't have a bunch of money behind them when they turned professional. They just did it and they had whatever job or whatever. I looked at myself as, I hadn't gotten to the level Sugar Ray Leonard had gotten to as an amateur. What business do I have turning
Yeah.
professional? You know, and I shouldn't have, I don't think I should have kept that pressure on myself because between the ages of 18 and 25, those are the most critical years. I think that physically I might have had it in me to at least come close to being a contender if it wasn't going to get a title shot. But
Yeah, it worked out the way it did.
yeah.
And then obviously you talked to me about the transition from being an athlete to then getting into writing and how you made that transition.
Well, so it's kind of a funny thing because I was a really poor student by the time I'd hit in fifth grade, and poor not because I wasn't smart, but just because I didn't really apply myself and I didn't like to read. My parents couldn't get me to read. When I started boxing, my parents that Christmas bought me a subscription to the Ring boxing magazine, right? And
Yeah.
I started looking at the pictures because they were cool. And then I'd read the captions beneath the pictures. Then I'd read the rankings and memorize them from the lowest weight to the highest weight. And then since I'm spending all this time looking at the magazine, I figured I might as well read a whole article. And so that eventually led me to being a writer. And I had the idea of telling stories probably as early as I was 8 years old in third grade. But when I was 16, my dad had graduated from the Cretan High School, which is named after the first bishop of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis, Bishop Cretan, which was in St. Paul all boys military high school. And the rival, that was considered more the kind of working class of the two. The rival that was considered a little more elite was St. Thomas Academy. And my dad really wanted us to go there. And so my brother, a year older than I was, we both went there from seventh to 12th grade. And when I was 16 in my junior year, there's a guy named Frank Blankley, a class called Writers in Writing, and he had us write a subscription or descriptive essays. And I wrote about the boxing gym and was describing the boxing gym and having gotten there. And when I was 14 and made the National Junior Olympics, my coach started trusting me with my own key. So I was talking about arriving there early and no one else there and describing, uh, the way the gloves smelled and how when I opened up the equipment locker and different stuff like that. And my teacher was impressed with the whole class, and he said, "Gentlemen, I'm going to start reading some of these essays, and I'm not going to say the names, but everyone knew it was me because he was reading about boxing, and I was really inspired by that, and I got an A on it, and it was the first time I really started to excel in school, and I started thinking to myself, maybe I could." Actually be a writer as well as a boxer. Maybe I'd even go to college someday. So
Right. Yep. And then obviously you've gone on to write a lot in your career. Talk to me about your book that's obviously, up for some pretty important awards.
Yeah, it was just so it won the Irish Network Minnesota 2024 Bloomsday Award, which is Bloomsday. It's a James Joyce literary award, and that was in June of last year. And then at the end of June this year, it won the Silver Midwest Book Award for the topics of category of religion and philosophy. So I was in the last three for that consideration. It covers 12 states in the Midwest. It's Midwest Independent Publishing Association. Um, in this book, I I could just tell you from the first line, I wrote, I came up with the title of this book on September 30, 2019, the day my father died. Uh, and that's was really the first line of the book. I wrote it that day, and it took me till going through everything that the country went through at the end of 2019 through 2020. And remember, I'm in St. Paul. My dad's from St. Paul. My mom's from Minneapolis. So we're kind of right in the middle of the riots that broke out at uh, at the end of May in 2025. And I'd worked a lot of years with the American Indian community, and one of the elders asked me to come out and protect Native American buildings in South Minneapolis after the police station had been burnt down. A Native American community center across the street had been burnt down also. So I was out with the armed organization AIM, American Indian Movement, for the next week, protecting buildings and everything. And uh, as I kind of came to the end of that year, I just said to myself, okay, I said I'm going to write this book. So in early 2020, between early February and late March, I just sat down and wrote it. And I had a bunch of poems that over the years I'd written, some of them in the recent, years right before this. And I just put the 20 poems in there, and I had the story, which kind of it talks about my dad's influence on me, and just how hard it was to lose him, and then the Catholic faith that got me through it, and what I learned from my dad about that, as well as uh, the the lessons I learned within the American Indian community, particularly with the Lakota tradition. Um,
Right.
the guys I talked about, the boxing coaches, are mentioned at the end of, well, in chapter one. As I go through the narration, I come to the first poem that I wrote. I'd like to share that with you if I could. It's a really short
Yeah, go
poem.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay, it's called. It was written on Monday, August 21st of 2017. It's called "The Perfect Metaphor." The perfect metaphor to describe boxing is jazz. There is a rhythm to every fight. I learned this from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White. A fighter has a rhythm, and the only way to beat him is for you to break it and establish your own. That's where improvisation begins. No one knows where it will lead or where it will end. Jazz is the perfect metaphor to describe boxing. Every fight has its rhythm, upon which is added improvisation. I learned that from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White, who practiced collaboration with Emmett Yanez and Bobby Zamora, the two men who taught me to fight.
Hmm. Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, no, and the book is called It's About Time. And talk to me about how you did eventually come up on that, and talking about selling this in honor of your dad.
Yeah, so well, the the title I came up with because, like I said, I was watching my father die, and I had I was I'd been out to New York a number of times, and I've got a good friend in there that I mentioned later in the book named Nick Bryant, who's been a journalist out there since 1995. And I've always been talking about moving out there and being a writer and being a boxing trainer. And I've spoken with like Gleason's gym out there and a couple other gyms. And I was trying to prepare myself to do that, and I was kind of coming up on that, and I had some delays. Um, and then my father, suddenly died, and then that just started to delay everything again. Um, and uh, I was, as I said, I was supposed to pick my mom and dad up from the airport on the 30th of September. They were down at the Marines Memorial Club. My dad's was a combat wounded Vietnam veteran. He was a first lieutenant platoon leader in the Army, and he joined the Marines Memorial Club a few years ago. That's in San Francisco. They had a 4 day vacation there, and they were sitting in the rental car at a Costco parking lot 5 minutes from the airport, talking about how great their marriage was, how much they loved each other, how they couldn't wait to get home. And my dad had a heart attack and slumped over the wheel. And there was a health fair going on. My mom got help, and two EMTs kept him alive, and he was on life support for 10 days. And so there I am looking at him. I'm thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. I gotta publish a book now. Well, no matter how well it does or whether it doesn't do well at all, I just have to do it. And so that's what I did. And it's kind of all around. It's written in a way to make sure that whoever reads it feels respected, and that it's a love song to St. Paul with a nod to Minneapolis, and it's kind of a recognition of America and where we are now, and just kind of an attempt to give the reader hope, to walk away from hope with hope for just how things are right now. And but the last thing that I said about, you know, it was ridiculous not to have something published by now. I got this poem that I wrote to a young lady after we kind of had a little bit of a kind of unfortunate kind of a departure with each other. And then I lead into right after that this real quick narration that explains coming up with the title of the poem. I mean, of the title of the book. If I could share that real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's called "Life So Simple" was the poem that's written on March 31st of 2019. As if to pray, you start today in meditation on your bicycle wheel, the separate spokes united in the center. You want me to be blunt, you say. I want to be direct, but fear I'll frighten you away. The final action is the original intention. This statement is authentically true, not just my invention. My responsibility is to you, a comfort for my rest, a respect in my behavior, helping you to be your best. You can push me away, invite me to stay or walk with me today, but we met for a reason, to teach each other and learn. Such a fact comes not from acts, but is a grace we did not earn. Demons distract, demons lie, and demons discourage us from our destiny till we die. Friends encourage, friends assist, and friends persist with love on which we rely. Your guardian angel already talked to mine. Together they have watched us share laughter and argue to the point of crying. You know they're sent by God who really does exist and is not a tyrant or a terrorist. Rather, he is love, family, life, held in common at the core. You and I, specific spokes, united in the center, spinning round from place to place and nothing more. There were some other poems I put together qualifying for appropriate inclusion in this book. I've always held myself, of course, to the highest of standards, never believing any of these poems ready for an attempt at publication, so I never tried, which is why I so embarrassingly titled the story, It's About Time. Dad challenged me once, as far back, I believe, as 2012, asking me why by the age of 40 I hadn't published at least one book. If I really was a writer, as I asserted myself to be, I should have been able to publish at least 5 novels or other books by then. I told him to lay off, that there were legitimate reasons for current incompletion, and that literary success was on its way. But that was all an excuse. The real reason was the lie in my heart that my work is going to be great. I just needed time to concentrate, which is always delayed right now for the job or the friend in trouble or another excuse which justified not trying. The truth is I was scared, so I never dared. If this book which can fall flat in its face, is never presented to the public, I'll never know if you, the reader, recognize my talent. If it does, in fact, fall flat in its face, at least metaphorically, I fall flat on mine. However, so what? It's about time.
Yeah, well, that's really cool, and I think that I like some of the stuff that you've been able to weave in with your boxing career to the book. You certainly have a way with words, and I think it's great to see an athlete, be able to do this, especially in the sport of boxing. And obviously an Olympic sport like that, and just really nice to be able to chat with you and about obviously the passion you have. And as I always encourage athletes, and as an author myself, you're not going to make time for that book until you really have that moment, I feel like, and I heard it in your voice where you talk about, it's time. You have to put everything else aside, and there can be excuses, there can be reasons why not. But then there's that eventual moment of, yes, it's time. And as you said, it's about time. And it's the why that really gets us to that point.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's kind of I guess that's the message of the book, and it's the appeal that I want to be able to be encouraging with what I've written. I'm talking about my own kind of lament. I'm talking about how sad it is now my dad's gone, and there's a lot I know I can do. He won't see it. But then again, look how long I've had him in my life. I'm a grown up man. I got to stand on my feet and do it.
Yeah.
And uh, you know, the same thing with boxing, with writing, or with any other sport, with any other endeavor. I think that we tell ourselves, we're okay. We kind of dream about greatness and doing things very well, and seeing ourselves as being kind of ideal in whatever role we have in life. But then we also have this inner voice where we tell ourselves, yeah, but you're not that good, and this so and so is better and stuff. And we just have to put that out of our minds and just take the one step forward each day and not be distracted. Boxersandwritersmagazine.com is my website, and that's got access to the two links. The first one is Amazon, and the second one is Lulu, Lulu.
Great.
Those are the two platforms on which you can purchase it.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic, and thank you so much for inspiring the next generation and getting more people to write books. I think it's fantastic.
My friend, it is so great to have talked to you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for everything. And I just hope you keep doing what you're doing, and it's a great podcast.
Thank you. All right, that wraps up another episode of the Athlete Brand Advisor podcast. I'm Greg Glynn. Glad you could tune in, and stay pliable, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast, because that's how we roll.